Okay, no, that's great. So good morning, everybody, again. Welcome to our fourth UCC webinar. So it's the last webinar before the 1st of May start, which is, of course, quite exciting. So for today, we wanted to summarize most important changes for May 1st, just to make sure that everybody is fully prepared and ready. We'll talk about the latest European updates, also the latest country updates, and then also a recap of the key changes before we go to live questions and answers. In the meantime, we've also updated our website with the answers on the questions that have been discussed last time. Just we kick off. Martin, I think it's going to start.
Yeah. So thank you, Eric. Yeah, as Eric said, we're just going to summarise some of the most important changes for 1st of May. Obviously, temporary storage is now increasing to 90 days from where it was 20 days for air and 45 days for sea. So in fact, it also allows for greater movement of goods within temporary storage. So that creates a large number of opportunities for people who do operate temporary storage facilities, goods within temporary storage, rather than use the transit system. As we all know, IPR drawback stops on the 1st of May. You can no longer enter goods into IPR drawback. You can still claim back any money whilst your throughput period is continuing. But all that will happen now is that there'll be a single procedure, inward processing, which will cover both the inward processing regime and what was the processing under customs control. End use, there's a new requirement to have a bill of discharge. That seems to be creating quite an impact with a number of end use traders in pulling together all the information of goods they're holding under end use, in order to be able to produce that bill of discharge at the end of each month. Type D warehousing ceases. So from now on, goods will be assessed on the duty rates, exchange rates on removal from a customs warehouse. It's mandatory to quote BTI. So if you've got a binding tariff ruling for goods, you have to quote it now, both on imports and exports. Within the declaration, there's a document code C626 that can be declared. First sale, anybody who's using the first sale or earlier sale provisions know that those will stop on the 1st of May, so it's no longer possible to buy 3 degrees and use the earlier factory invoice. There are some transitional measures, some sunset clauses for contracts already in place. But that does have an impact on sales and warehouse. So the only sale that can be used now is the last sale for export. So what customs have said is that where there's a valid sale prior to goods entering into warehouse, that is the one that must be used. Now the negative effect of this, not only that you can't use an earlier sale, is that if anyone is selling off below cost to another party, they will no longer be able to use that selling off price for the basis of duty. However, you can now operate retail sales in warehouse. This doesn't mean you can allow shoppers into your customs warehouses. It only relates to remote retail sales, so catalogue sales or internet sales. And, as we've mentioned several times on these webinars, a big issue, a big change in the UCC is the AO criteria, which really is within all the parts of the UCC and applications, and the new AO criteria in terms of customs compliance and tax compliance in general is really key if you're applying for new authorisations. So on, but the most important changes, just a couple of maybe national ones. They may impact on other countries as well, but ones with particular national importance. In the UK, the new comprehensive guarantees. Generally, in the UK, it's not necessarily to provide guarantees for duty suspension regimes. That will changes if you hold a UCC authorisation. again, transitional measures mean that existing authorizations you can continue without using a guarantee. Onward supply relief coming out of a customs warehouse. So currently, people can claim a VAT relief if they're coming out of a customs warehouse and moving on to another member state. There's a clamp down on how that's used in the UK. So this must be declared to customs prior to the good being removed. Again, that's affecting a number of traders. And the last one for the UK is no requirement for a supplementary declaration for goods going into a customs warehouse. So it will just be a simplified procedure. Under simplified procedure, it'll just be a simplified declaration and no supplementary declaration. So Abby, you can cover the Belgian ones.
Yeah. For Netherlands, we've got the mandatory use of the re-export declaration. For example, if you re-export goods from a bonded warehouse regime. Previously, you could only use you were allowed to use the transit declaration without any export declaration. So now you use the export declaration, which can be followed by a transit declaration in depending on the specific scenario that you want. In Belgium, there are new codes in the PLDA system. Most important are the new warehouse type codes that have been introduced. So some other codes that have changed, for example, box 44 codes, but that's mostly related to the to regimes like bonded warehouse type D or IPR drawback. So if we move to the next topic, so latest European updates. So we received the link to the latest UCC webpage from the European Commission, which should summarize all the information and provide links to the relevant documents. So the withdrawal of the sensitive goods lists for NCTS, that change was not well known yet in a lot of countries. Next one is actually caused quite some confusion, because first there was the withdrawal of certain package codes, but that was wrong communication from Europe, so all package codes still remain valid, so there's no change. On the exchange rates, the 5% fluctuation clause will be withdrawn. So it was still possible to update the exchange rate automatically when there is a 5% fluctuation. So it's not applicable anymore. Actually, in most countries, you'll just have to do the monthly update of the exchange rate. The AO guidelines are now published. I've not checked in detail the latest UCC webpage. I assume also going to be there will also be a link to these guidelines. All guidelines are also still being updated and are pending publication. For example, on the exporter or valuation. Actually, we've already received some of these documents, but as far as we know, they have not been officially published. So I would to follow up and look at the web page regularly to see whether something has changed.
Okay.
I think we can move to the next one.
Thanks, Eric. Yeah, so just some of the latest changes in the UK. For those that are not aware, the actual changes on the chief system will actually be implemented from the 3rd of May, not the 1st of May. It's probably worth considering the timing of declarations, particularly if there's changes in those declarations as a result of the UCC. One of the UK customs system is it reprocesses declarations when the goods are presented to customs. So particularly on exports, if you pre-lodge a declaration, it will be reprocessed when the goods arrive at the port. Therefore, it does run the risk if any data changes, it will fail reprocessing, and there'll be an error when they arrive at port. So it may be worth consider submitting the declaration until the 3rd. Originally, Customs suggested that Series 49, which are CPCs, which are used from customs unions, Turkey, San Marino, etc., would remain. They've then clarified that and said no. They realised that Series 49 CPCs aren't listed in the UCC, and so they're likely to be withdrawn soon after. For anyone on the session that operates at UK airports, in the inventory system there's the ability to do simplified movements between transits or airports or transshipment goods, imports and exports. Those will change from the 1st of May. The basic position that Customs are taking is that unless the company is a holder of a temporary storage authorization, they will not be able to use these simplified procedures. That means the only option for moving goods between airports or from import and export will be the transit system. So again, if you do use those procedures at UK airports and don't hold a temporary storage authorization, then it's worth checking your position. UK Customs have also issued some guidance on the difference between what is a movement under a special procedure and what is TORO, which is a transfer of rights and obligations. Basically, if the declaration is made to another special procedure, then that is a movement. So, for example, if you've got goods under inward processing by one IP holder, and a customs declaration is made into the other to an IP holder, that is a movement under IP. It's not TORO. The exception to this is end use, where you can't do a subsequent entry to end use. So if you're end use trader and you've entered goods into end use, then the liability remains with you until those goods are discharged. So you can only transfer the obligation, you can transfer the liability. So that's my ones, I think. Eric?
Yep, correct. Thank you. So for the Netherlands, there's no confirmation yet whether the BTI code can be used in NCTS and export. So we've asked Customs several times, and their answer, unfortunately, was rather vague. So more in sense that they said that, yeah, it could be used, perhaps. So that's not a very clear answer. So I would just advise to try it out from next week and see whether it works. If it doesn't work, then I think you don't have to worry, because normally BTI is more related to the duty. So we know that it works in import and also in the GPA, that's the periodic declaration. So that definitely seems to be the most important declarations will be used. For Belgium, there was also a wrong communication on re-export and Box 32. Actually, it was communicated the day that we had our last webinar. So Box 33 can still be sent. So no worries about that. We just received a last-minute communication on the NCTS guarantees yesterday. So it's not a very good example of timely communication. Some of you were already aware of that, but the default amount per declaration has now been increased from 7,000 to 10,000 euro. You have to make sure you use the correct guarantee reference if you're using sensitive goods. So we already talked a bit about sensitive goods, the fact that the special code and the quantity can't be provided anymore from next week. But so in some cases, customers have a specific guarantee for sensitive goods, so they should continue to use the guarantee or ask to merge, for example, the guarantee for sensitive goods and the one for non-sensitive goods into one to make it easier. And the last one is maybe still the most important one, is that for sensitive goods, they ask to do a full calculation of the duties and taxes and put that in the guarantee amount field. So this comes really rather late, just before 1st of May. I believe, to be honest, that you can probably still use the default amounts. I don't know whether they're going to check very strictly on this point. And the last topic for Belgium is that the use of the new temporary storage codes in the summary declaration for temporary storage are postponed to July 2016. So that's more for that's not for the regular declaration. That's more for the manifest that is sent by the carrier. Yeah, it's something we're also supporting, so we thought would be useful to mention. So yeah, you see, Belgium fortunately didn't make didn't do very good on the communication side.
That's true, Eric. Across the EU, I think the UK as well yesterday just published their tax guidance as well, and unfortunately, it's all identified there's errors in that. So I think across the board, this shows how important the UC and the EU just issuing its UCC guidelines as well yesterday just shows how very difficult it is for us all to try and be prepared when a lot of the information doesn't really come out until the very last moment.
Yeah, and there are also a lot of discussions on the European level to find better procedures and processes for publishing specifications, allowing sufficient time to test. For example, they're talking about 18 to 24 months before go live. The final specifications should be available. I think looking at that, it's a very good evolution, but yeah, for UCC, unfortunately, we have actually seen quite the opposite, which means a lot of last-minute communication, a lot of unclarity, just weeks and weeks before the start. Of course, as we discussed in previous webinars, a lot of the UCC changes will only come into force in the coming years. So luckily, the impact in many cases is still limited. Otherwise, I'm afraid there would be a lot of issues in business. Maybe before we go to questions, to say that we've also sent quite a lot of communication to our customers about the changes in a bit more detail, and also telling telling about the updates we are doing or we have done on the software itself. So that has also happened in the last couple of weeks, and also our professional services team has been busy in doing also changes in the configuration, for example, for the re-exports in the Netherlands. So most of that work has been finished, as far as I know. Of course, we still have to see what's going to happen next week. I think nobody can predict exactly. So hopefully everything transition will be very smooth. Sorry. Also, because of that, we have not planned our next webinar, but we'll just wait and see how everything will start next week. If there are a lot of things to say, we'll definitely set up a webinar very soon. Apart from that, we're also thinking to turn the UCC webinar into a more general webinar on regulatory updates, so that we can also provide you information, for example, on the new AGS system in the Netherlands, or on the CDS system, or the CDS introduction in the UK in the coming years. So I need to inform you, of course, very soon on the next date for the webinar. I think we can now go to the questions part. So if you have got a question, please press *1 to unmute your line. We're happy to answer them.
So I'm just this is Przemek Kordowski from Livingstone International. I've got a question on de minimis exemption in the UK. I know that still until now we've had this opportunity when there were some imports of very low value. Then like a duty calculated could be £2 British. MRC or Chief in return they didn't calculate anything. Going to be not the case?
No, from 3rd of May, Chief will calculate anything above a penny. So obviously, if the duty is less than a penny, it won't calculate it. But anything more, it will. So the €10 waiver, which equated to around £8, I think it was in the UK, that stops, and UK Customs have confirmed that will stop from the 3rd of May. So. And it's a configuration setting within Chief, so it's relatively easy for them to switch that off. It's a configuration actually, I think, on the customs procedure because you'll know it doesn't apply to goods coming out of customs warehouse. You don't get the same waiver out of customs warehouse as you do on a normal import. So it's something they can switch on and off. And yeah, my understanding is it will be switched off from the 3rd of May.
Okay, brilliant.
Engines.
Martin, this is Olga at State Law Sugars. The question is regarding procedures. Comprehensive guarantee is required, but utilization is under the CCC. Is going to be an override code?
You got an IP authorization under the CCC, yeah?
Correct, yes.
Yeah, so you shouldn't need a guarantee until your authorization is reissued or reassessed. So,
my understanding is the Chief will require a guarantee.
No, what?
Anyway,
No, what are you using? Sorry, everyone else is getting a bit technical. Are you using CPC 5100?
171.
5171. Okay. So 5171. What there's two document codes: a non-AID and a non-AIV. Okay. You declare both of those. If you declare them with statuses of JP, you don't need any guarantee tax lines. If you declare them with status UP, then Chief will look for guaranteed tax lines. So in your case, you'd put non-AID JP, non-AIV JP. And I would suggest it. Yeah, okay. And because I've tested it on the test system.
Okay.
Questions? Just on guarantee point as well, again, just to show how strange it is in the UK, we've asked the question of UK Customs, the method of payment code should be for comprehensive guarantees, and they don't know yet. I hope nobody's got a comprehensive guarantee in the UK from the 3rd of May because they may struggle to declare to UK Customs.
Okay.
Yep.
Any other questions? That in the UK people are most busy with UCC?
I've got a question. Sorry, I'm based up in Aberdeen. A lot of confusion up at the moment about the movement to and from the continental shelf. And we received correspondence this week from HMRC saying that there's going to be some sort of leniency in a transitional period, and the operator ships manifest can continue to be used. So if there is a time period this transitional period will be, and how long it will be for?
No, I mean, they've said generally in the UK is most of the transitional arrangements will be until CDS and the new customs system comes into place, which is now, probably 2018. It was supposed to be at the end 2017. However, I spoke earlier about these airport transshipment changes and movements under temporary storage, and the UK customs have only given traders until October. So the transitional arrangements could say is probably anywhere between 6 months until CDS. I've not other changes that came out regarding the continental shelf. I hadn't seen the changes that were going to allow you to continue using the paper-based methods under traditional. They made no reference in that correspondence as to. We suspect it's because you may need to get authorised for simple procedures, and they realise that they're understaffed and they can't process all the applications in time. Probably a driving force for allowing them to continue under transition more than anything else, I would imagine.
Because there's a lot of there's certain companies that are saying, well, no, we're going to go ahead anyway. We're going to do the entries, but then you've got the operators. There's going to be a big gap on if they're going to be going out to all the individual companies, freight agents as such for export declarations and import declarations for supply vessels coming to and from the CS. So arriving and departing them. Some companies are going to go ahead and just do entries anyway. There's confusion up here as to how it's going to operate as of next week.
Yeah, I can sympathise completely, and it's probably a good example of one that customs haven't handled particularly well in that. And with all honesty, they probably didn't understand the business, unfortunately, because it's a very niche area where it's a very specific process you're doing, and as I say, you've got the operators and the helicopter companies moving the ship stores on manifest procedures, and obviously you're in Aberdeen and the people making decisions are based in London, so it's a classic example of they probably didn't really understand. They look at the legislation and they read what the legislation says you should be doing, but somebody says, well, that's all very well, but this is what we actually do, and then you get into this, as you say, this period of confusion over almost two speeds. People that are saying, well, we'll just do it, we'll do the declarations, we'll do the arrivals and departures, and then if you've got other people that don't want to do it and are allowed not to do it, then it puts people like yourself, well, do I do it for some and not for others? It's a very difficult thing. If you want to drop us an email on that, then it's something we can maybe follow up with customs on your behalf and see if we can get a bit more information for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just on the bills of discharge, we're based in the UK and we operate end use. We're going to sort of benefit from the transitional period because our current agreement doesn't run out until next December, so 2017. But nevertheless, our understanding is, when you sort of mentioned your presentation, that we still have to do the bills of discharge, but we seem to have any information from HMRC as to how any visibility on what platform is going to be, or how often we're going to have to file them, or is there any views on that at all? Because it just seems
I can definitely say on the lodgement of them, because we've covered that with customs, and although the law doesn't allow for aggregation or the Commission happy for there to be a monthly term. So if you discharge end-use goods in the month of then you've got until the end of June to lodge your bill of discharge, which will cover all those goods discharged in May. So you can have a monthly periodic return. If you want to wait a month, I mean, customers make this big point that obviously when you get reassessed and you've got these, you might actually want to be doing it more frequently because to reach your guarantee amounts. So that's passing in periods. You can do it every day, but no more than a month's return, which must be submitted by the end of the following month. In terms of the platform for that, customers just emailed me today just saying that they expect publication of their bill discharge forms for IP end use on their website very soon. They're called BOD 1, BOD 2, BOD 3 and BOD 4, interestingly enough. I suspect they're going to be, in the UK, they're very much into filling these forms online. So I expect they're going to be a document that you go through on screen and then print a PDF at the end of the process. Now, clearly, there's going to be a box on there which says, see attached schedule. Because most end-use traders are going to have thousands of lines. You're not going to be keying data in. So I suspect there'll be an online form which will be like a covering sheet. And then it will be see attached schedule. But even then, I will send that amount of paper into customs, so it may well be worth, I suspect, the officers will come to some kind of agreement where maybe the information is provided electronically or is available on site because, do you really want to receive a box of documents of emails of pages?
Yeah. And we could have thousands of items being discharged from end use in a month, and it's just getting that information how what they want basically.
I do. Yeah, sorry.
No, I was just going to sort of reiterate. We wasn't sure whether we had to do them sort of monthly or quarterly or any stories. That's actually really useful what you've given us today.
No, yeah. I mean, what I would suggest. So I already have a trader who does this with IP where they have a lot of returns, and they just they email them as an Excel spreadsheet and a PDF. So I suspect it will be something very similar to that. That's the only way anyone can really handle it. So.
Yeah, that's certainly what we want, is to send some sort of summary sheet, or something like that. So it sounds like that's adaptation for us to have with the local customs office. Is that sound about right? Yeah,
I would say. I mean, it's almost one of those. My approach should be, this is what we're going to do. Tell me if you've got a problem with that, because if you ask them, you just won't get an answer.
Okay, good stuff. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. Any final questions?
If you still have questions, you can, of course, always send them to ucc@descartes.com. The address will remain available after go live, definitely. And for future webinars, I think I already explained that we are just going to wait and see how everything goes, and then define the date for our next session. In the longer term, we're probably going to reduce the frequency a bit, and also to take into account some other regulatory changes that are not directly related to UCC. So we think we believe we are as ready as we can be for next week in our software and different applications we have. So I wish you a good weekend, and good luck next week, and we'll keep you up to date on any specific changes that we are aware of. And goodbye.
Thank you.